boys and girls, today is our first writing lesson for an actual story. This isn't going to be a journal entry. This is going to turn into a small moment story. So there's a couple different terms that teachers like to use when it comes to a small moment story. So small moment, that makes sense. It's a small moment in your life. And sometimes we call it a seed story, which I'll explain to you why. You'll understand as we go. Or a personal narrative. So personal means it's about me. A narrative is a story. So we are going to be writing personal narratives. That means you're not just making up some story off the top of your head, or like, oh my gosh, one time these aliens came down and then there was an explosion and monsters came out of the hole. No, we're not doing that. This has to be something real. It has to be a real moment about your life, okay? So what we're gonna do is today is a brainstorming day. When you do the writing process, like a writer who's going to write a book doesn't just sit down and think, I'm gonna write a whole book today, and then just write a whole book. They think about it, they brainstorm what ideas they want, then they plan it out. There's a whole writing process, and we're gonna be learning about it for the first time as we do this narrative writing. So the first step is brainstorming. So when you're going to brainstorm a list of ideas of real things that have happened to you, and I know Mrs. Capone had you do some brainstorming in your journals. Couldn't think of the word for it. But we're going to do something a little different today. So we're going to think of a time, like something that you could share about your life. The problem is sometimes when you think about something that you could share, a story, sometimes the story is too big. And we call that a watermelon story. So for example, if I'm going to write a story today and I tell you that I want to write a story about my time at Haley School, that is a watermelon story. It's too big. So if you think about a watermelon, like here's a big old slice of watermelon. I shouldn't have made the top green, but you know, what's done is done, guys. So this is my watermelon part right here, okay? So if I am writing a story about my time at Haley School, I have been at Haley School for 14 years. And I also went to summer school when I was little. I came here to do arts and crafts for summer school. So that's a pretty big story. It's too big. You can't write a whole story. You can if you're writing a big fat novel like this thick that's Harry Potter, has 700 pages. But my time at Haley School is much too big of a story. It would take a long time to write, a lot of planning. It would be a big, thick, fat novel, and that's not what we're writing. So when I talk about a watermelon story is just a story that is too big. So I'm gonna add that. Look at that amazing watermelon, such a good artist. Watermelon story for this specific assignment is too big. We need to narrow it down and make this puppy a little smaller. So what's smaller than a giant half of a watermelon? We could cut this watermelon. So if we cut it up, I'm gonna give you a little slice of the watermelon to tell you a little bit about Haley School. So maybe what's something that I've done in my time at Haley School. Well, I used to teach kindergarten, then I was an instructional coach, and now I teach third grade, and now I teach virtual third grade. So I could put maybe just my time in third grade. That could be a lot smaller. So instead of all of my time at Haley School, I'll shorten it up to third grade. So I'm gonna add that here. Is that going to be a shorter story and maybe an easier story to write? Yes. However, it's still a lot because I've taught third grade for 5 years. So it's still kind of big, still kind of a lot to do. I don't know that would be something, instead of this big of a chapter, I could maybe write like that big. And I'm not writing a chapter book. I'm just gonna write like a 1-page story. So that's still too big. So we call that a slice story. So a watermelon story is too big. A slice story, what would you say about a slice story? Woo! Tripping over a stool here. Let me move it so I don't fall on it. It's still too big if I'm only trying to fill a couple pages. So I'm gonna write that. Still too big to fit on just a couple pages. Again though, this is just for what we're writing right now. if you're looking at Junie B. Jones books, those are going to be slice stories where they take a part of her life, but it's a bigger part. If you're looking at a Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, one of those big fat books, it's going to want to be a watermelon story. But we need it to be even smaller. So what can we find that's even smaller than a watermelon slice? Hint, hint. A seed. So now, instead of my entire time at Haley School, we narrowed it down to third grade. So now I got to narrow it down to one little idea from third grade. So what is one story I could tell about my time in third grade? Just one story. I know. One time, Mr. Springer and I pranked Mr. Sleesman, a fifth grade teacher. So that, I'm gonna write that, pranking Mr. Sleesman. And now that story I could tell in one page because it was a one-day thing. It was, it was long enough that I can give you some good details, but not so long that you're gonna have to sit and read this for a month. So a seed story, I'll draw a little seed here. This is what you are looking for today. This is what I want you to write today. No, I don't want you to write it. I want you to brainstorm for it today. You're not gonna write it. So it's a specific small moment in your life that's not made up. It really happened. So a specific small moment. Get down my knee so I can fit right here. From your life, and I'm gonna underline your life because it has to be something real. If it's really happened to you, you should be able to talk about it really fast because you remember it. It's in your head. You don't have to try to make things up to make it sound fancier than it already is. It's just something that happened. So specific small moment from your life that could fill a few pages. I'll put a few pages, but I would say the goal for this assignment is probably just going to be like a page. I'd be happy with a good page. All right. So now we know the difference between a watermelon story, a slice story, and a seed story. So today I want you to brainstorm some ideas for seed stories. So I want you to think about, as you're making this list, can I write this in a couple pages or in one page? Well, yeah, I could write about my whole time at Haley School in one page, but it wouldn't be a good story. It would be, I taught at Haley School, I taught kindergarten, I taught third grade, I was an instructional coach, I've been here for 14 years, the end. And that's not a good story. That's not interesting. There's not very many details, so I wouldn't do that. So if I'm gonna make a list of ideas, and you can do this right in your writer's notebook, go to the next clean page, and let's do like Mrs. Capone has us do, where we write today's date. And actually I recorded this video ahead of time, so I don't know what the date's gonna be when you do this. So you write whatever the date is. 9 dash, surprise me with your date, dash 2020. And I always do 2020 so that people can't sneak in, because I was told if you just write a 20 at the end, somebody could sneak in other numbers and change, oh, you can't see that, and change it so that it's a different date. So I don't want people to be able to sneak in and change my date. I'm gonna leave it 2020. So write the date, and then you're gonna brainstorm seed stories. So you're going to write seed story ideas. I'm gonna bring it over here more. Give me a second. All right, so seed story ideas, and then start making a list. And if I say list, that doesn't mean you write one thing and you're like, hey, I'm done for the day. So maybe you can do bullet points or numbers of some of the different ideas you had. So one of my ideas was a prank for Mr. Sleesman. Let's see, if I'm gonna do another story, how about I write about the time I went to Disney World? Uh-oh. That might be too big. That might be a watermelon or a slice story, because I don't think I could tell you all about our entire vacation to Disney World on just a couple pages. So how about I just tell you about my favorite ride? We really liked the Buzz Lightyear ride, so I could just tell you about that specific thing, Buzz Lightyear ride. So if you have someone helping you at home, what I would like them to do, and I'll type this in the instructions for today, is after you make your list, have them look through it and see if they agree with you that you could write that in a page or two. If it's too big of a story and it would just require too many details, the fact that you're getting to a chapter book, maybe that's something you can save for another day. And today, maybe find a moment from that big story that you could write about that would be a small story. So you are just brainstorming ideas today, and then tomorrow we'll use this list. Do not start writing your story today. Brainstorm only and go.